Hello. Today we're going to go over underscore R type clothing, also called skin tone clothing. I think a lot of people struggle with this because there's quite a few things you need to know before you get started, or else it's a big headache to deal with. So I'm going to go over basically the three most common issues I see with people trying to do this and how to avoid those issues. The first thing I always want to talk about is UV layout. You'll notice if you look at any underscore R type clothing, they're all set up kind of the same way. For instance, if you're looking at male legs, like lower components, if you look at the YTDs, you'll see all the time, always, that the leg portion is always in this same area on the texture. It's always in this bottom left type situation. I think that's true for female as well. It's the bottom left and then going upwards. And that's because you can't actually move these UVs. So if you are, for instance, getting something for male, editing something for males, and you're making a pair of shorts, then the UV area you have to work with is this part on the side here and this part above. Obviously, if you're making longer shorts that cover more of the legs, you can, go a little bit farther down on this left-hand side, but you'll see here this is a different pair of shorts, also for MP male, you'll see the leg is still in this bottom left corner. And that's actually because the texture that you're seeing here in the YTDs for any given piece of clothing is not actually the skin texture that's being used in game. For Freemode specifically, if you go to your RPF Explorer and you type in MP_FM_skin, I am in the Streamed Peds MP Overlay TXD folder. You can see there's this set of skin tones here that are separate from any other YDD component or anything. These are the base game skins. These are basically the sets of skins. If you ever download custom skin sets, then you'll be familiar with these because this is what you're going to replace. These are for female and both for male. You can see there is all of the different skin tone suffixes, and so they have a portion for the feet with all of the suffixes, the lower with all of the suffixes, upper with all the suffixes, and for male the same thing. And so if we go look at the lower male white skin tone, you'll see that just like you see for the YDDs over here, this texture is set up in the exact same way. It's because it's using this texture in this YTD, and it's not worried about what you have here at all. You can actually, and you will see sometimes with modded clothing, I know I've done it, so if you've downloaded my mods, you'll be familiar, but you can leave this part of the texture completely blank because this is not what it's using. So it doesn't matter what goes here because this is going to be skin tone regardless. But that also means that you cannot move this if you want the skin tone to act properly for tone changing, for tattoos, and for blood mapping and all that. You should not ever mess with the legs, like the skin tone portion of the legs. You should, whatever you want to do on the upper part, and then your UVs go around the sides of where this skin tone goes. And it's the same thing for all types of skin tone components. For instance, this is a female feet. You can see this is set up a little bit differently, but they are all set up the same way. So any _R female foot will have the foot down here on the bottom half of the texture, and then this top half is where you can put your custom UVs. So if I wanted to make my own shoe, what I would do is just delete all of the portions of the shoe here. Delete all that, and then I have these feet that are, already set up for heels. And I would not move this UV down here at all. I can obviously manipulate the foot in the 3D model, but I would not touch the UVs at all. I would add them exactly as they are so that it looks the same as every other foot component in the game. Does that make sense? I hope I'm making sense. And just again, to reiterate a final note, if you have obviously pants or longer shorts, if you're not going to use this part of the leg, if you're not going to use the upper part of the leg, then you can invade that texture space with more of whatever texture you need, your custom textures, your custom UVs, but you just can't move, you know, even if you just have ankles. Let me see if I can grab, I didn't merge my vertices before I did this, but if you had everything, if you just had ankles for like a pair of pants, then you can use all of this texture space right here, because it's going to be, you know, this is going to be covered by pants. So you can go down into this space, but you would again leave the ankles in this little strip right here. This is where they have to go for everything to work easily and properly. Okay. The not being able to move UVs is by far the hardest part, and the other two major pain points that I see people have are a little bit easier to deal with. Number one, this is the most easy fix of them all, is your embedded texture names, aka your normal and your specular texture, should be named like Rockstar names them, especially for the specular. Lower, you might be able to get away with naming it something random, but for the specular, it needs to be whatever the component name is, underscore spec, underscore whatever the number of the component is, or you can just put 000 every time. The number at the end doesn't matter so much, but this format is the important part. So if you have feet, do feet spec 000, lower spec 000, upper spec 000, you know, whatever component you're working with, this is how it should be laid out. And you should get into the habit of naming things like this anyway. It's just going to save you trouble hunting down bugs if you, you know, do as the game intends, right? Do as Rockstar intends for it to be. I have seen it where people have this named something random and then their skin tone isn't working and they wonder why, and it's because it's named something random. So just know that you should get into the habit of naming these, even when you're working with underscore U type clothing. If you get into the habit, it won't be that hard to keep track of, you know, and then you won't have bugs and you won't have to wonder. Okay, so that's the super easy fix. Okay, the last thing that people get caught up on, and this is going back a little bit harder, a little bit more up in difficulty again, this has to do with the specular texture itself, and specifically the alpha layer. First of all, number one, to work on clothing like this, you need a program of some sort that can show you in your RGB channels, it can show you an alpha layer that you can edit. And that's mainly so that because the alpha layer is what is telling the texture that is where the skin tone is. This is basically the little tech behind using the MPFM skin tones. Of course, I left them. These skin tones over here that we talked about earlier. This is what's telling the game, hey, you need to use the skin tone texture in this area of the texture, and all of this white space right here is clothing, is your regular clothing. It's not going to change. It's not going to use skin tone at all. Sometimes it depends on whether you have to edit this or not. Obviously, if you were making a pair of short shorts, and like we saw in Blender with the short shorts over here, you know, we can use this upper portion right here and all of this right hand side. If this is where you place your texture and you didn't have to, like, you weren't making any pair of pants, you were just using the legs as they were basically, then you probably don't need to edit this part of the alpha at all, and you can just worry about the regular part, you know, whatever color you need the other parts to be. You can obviously fill this up with whatever color you need all in this space. And then you don't have to worry about the alpha at all. If you do have to worry about the alpha, the game paints it this kind of weird direction. I'll be honest, I don't know why they do this gradient down to black here. I'm assuming it's for some sort of like shading type of situation. If you're doing this completely custom by yourself, if you need a lot of this adjusted, then you can just, usually you have this like this already, right? And then you would just paint in white wherever you need the rest of your clothing to take up space, right? So you just leave this alone and you just paint white wherever you need the skin tone to be deleted from. Okay, here's the best example I could find of a specular that I've personally edited. Here you can see I have this pair of weird pair of shorts where it's like shorts, and then we have a thigh cutout, and then it's like leggings underneath. So I have this weird custom area where I need that alpha channel to be, and then the rest that I don't need it on. So if we look at the specular for this, you can see I just have this section, and obviously it's because I'm not using any of the lower half of the legs. I can use that space for my texture, my custom texture, but the UV of the leg has not been moved for the part of the leg that's actually showing, right? Just like we discussed in part 1. And then you can see on my alpha channel, I have this gray where the leg skin tone is actually showing, that little thigh part peeking through, and then the rest that is all fabric is white. So that's my best advice for you is to grab the most skin tone showing specular you can. For instance, for females, I always use lower 15 from the base game, like no DLC, just the base game lower 15 specular, and I usually work off of that because that's easier. And for males, it's probably the same thing, where you would just use this lower 14. I'm hoping this is base game. Let me check actually. Yeah, okay, so this is base game, no DLC, the first lower 14 in the game. I think it just shows like the most leg it possibly can out of all the other ones. So I would use this as my base specular and then work from there to do whatever I need to for the alpha channel. But aside from that, I think those are like the 3 biggest things, or at least I can't think of anything else that goes wrong. I'm sure somebody is going to be able to find it, but that's the basics of what you need to know for skin tone. Don't move the UVs. Name your embedded textures properly, and make sure that your alpha layer on your specular for the RGB channels is correctly set up for skin tone or not skin tone. The only other thing I can think of is I know some people try to, this is in the same vein as step 1 where you can move the UVs. You also cannot make this a weird dimension because that's obviously going to stretch the UVs in a different way. So you'll see for everything skin tone related, they're always going to be square. If this is 1024, then it's going to be 1024 by 1024, like width and height. If it's 512, then it's going to be 512 by 512 or 256 by 256. It's always going to be square textures. They're never going to be 1024 by 512 because that's going to stretch it out, and that's going to do the same problem that you're going to have even if you didn't move the UVs. Then it's going to stretch out this way, and you're still not going to have the skin tone working as it should, right? So that is the only other thing I can think of, is that you have to, like I said, you have to keep it as it is, as you see here. Your texture needs to go in this other space, and the leg should be left alone. Okay? All right, I hope somebody learned something from this. That's all. Okay, goodbye. Have fun.